So I'm just going to do a quick rundown of this crystal because I was getting some questions about, what exactly is going on here in terms of what you're seeing. And so basically, this base mesh here is this is a Quixel Megascans asset. I think I might still have the name if you're curious. It's VIX SDI 3DW. You can type that into the bridge search menu and it'll find this rock for you. The next part is this kind of crystal array. Let me just grab everything in this. Right, select layers. Oh, I'm sorry. Just grab these, select objects from selected layers. So all of these are actually they were originally like these meshes or these mesh objects, I should say. They were basically just painted into place using the 3ds Max object paint, but then I went back and manually moved things around and then kind of like created these little layers where you have multiple you can see like multiple crystals all on top of each other. It's all generated from like I think like four mesh objects. So I can show you. These are the four. These are the four meshes. I originally got some crystals from CG Trader, but they really weren't working for me, and so I kind of just remodeled them and then created these little miniature arrangements. I didn't even end up using these actually because they just created this kind of weird pattern into the crystal array, and I didn't like the way that looked. So I think I actually only ended up using like these here. And I think that one of the main things is when you see crystals in 3D, a lot of times they have these kind of like pointy ends to them. You go like this, and it has this kind of shape. I'm doing a quick and dirty job, but it has this kind of shape basically. And a lot of the rock that I was trying to model, which is something called Dundazite or Dundazite and Crocite, you can see it doesn't really have that type of shape. It has a kind of like rounder, flatter end. So I just went through and did that. So anyway, those are the crystals, and then I guess one of the interesting things, in my opinion, is this thing here. So let me grab the rock in this. I'm calling these bubbles for lack of a better term, but this is basically meant to be the base for the Dundazite, which is this kind of here, I'll pull up the reference. Which is this kind of structure here, which you can find in these crocite masses. And here's another picture, and you can see it's this kind of like white growth. And so this is using like a pretty complex Tyflow construction, and this is just a mesh that's been extracted. So I think basically what happens is I use uh, I don't want this to load in the background. I grow the Tyflow onto the surface here, and then I just take so I'm not loading it, but a Tyflow will be populated onto this surface, and then if I go into my TyMesher, I have another TyMesher object that will then mesh that object, and it produces basically this structure here. So this just is kind of a convenient happenstance that the TyMesher produces this kind of rounded bubble shape that's a lot like the reference that I'm going for. And you can see it preserves that shape pretty well. The tricky part though is that this is like, this object is, about a million polys. It's very dense, and I don't want to scatter everything on the bottom surface of it. So what I ended up doing is just taking that mass and then just selecting sort of backface with backfaces turned off, and then I get this this kind of structure here, and then I'm cutting out this middle part because I know that you're not going to see it because it's covered by the crystals. And so this is basically a surface from which I'm scattering a bunch of the next part, which is also Tyflow. And this mesh has been extracted, but I don't have to do that. I can just show you this one, Tyflow Rocks Crystal. Sorry about that. Um, where did my, oh, this is the time measure. Sorry, hold on. Extract time measure. There we go. So I have these like little, something is binging in the background. I have these like crystals scattered all over the place. You can see this is actually not even using a custom mesh. This is just using the chunk, or I think it's like chunk or shard. There's a flat chunk and a round chunk. And I'm just changing the scale and then scattering it all over the surface of these little, of these bubbles. And the reason for that is because, again, let me pull up my reference real quick. Sorry about that. When you look at the Dundazite, you see it has this kind of like, it almost looks like ice. And so I wanted to replicate that type of look. And I tried all these different ways. I tried displacement, I tried micro displacement, I tried bump normals, I tried all these other different techniques. I just couldn't get it to work. And I ended up just scattering all these little pieces of geo everywhere and assigning them this kind of refractive material. And I think it creates an interesting sort of like icy sort of look. Like if we go to, if we look at some of the actual renders, I think it preserves a lot of that character actually, and I think it's especially evident in some of these other ones where you can see these kind of sparkling. And so that's that. And then the last part is just, oh, and I guess I should mention this. This bubble material is using a pretty weird subsurface scattering material where I'm kind of using a curvature node to brown the top. So like when you look at this, you'll see that parts of it are like kind of discolored, and that's from like here, for example, and that's from the using this curvature node to drive a kind of complex layered material. And then the last thing is just more Tyflow scattering. There's some like little hairs here. I actually modeled these hairs because I tried to use Ornatrix, and it just is such a pain in the ass to use. And anyway, there's just a kind of like a basic scatter of hairs onto here, and then there's also like a basic scatter of more little shards, and you can see these like little nodes right here. These are just little tiny shards with, or I should say chunks actually, with like a translucent material, and they're scattered all over it to kind of give some extra grit. And then I guess there is actually another thing, which is this pink. This is actually a forest pack object, and it is using like the same. What is this? Oh, an update. I don't want to do this right now. These crystals here are the same ones as these large ones. They've just been like flattened. You can see the Z axis has been compressed a lot, and then they've been just scattered around to kind of create this outflow of like small crystals to look as though it's kind of growing out of the rock and into these larger crystals. Oh, I forgot. There's actually one more thing. This is actually a pyrite mass. I think I got this from CG Trader, and then I just reshaded it. So you can see it has these kind of interesting striations, and it kind of blends with the base mesh. It looks kind of like a VDB Boolean add. Again, I don't want to take the time to make something like this when I could just use it from another source. And so I have these kind of like at the intersection of where the some of the crystals meet the base, and I just think it helps make it look a little bit more organic in terms of how it's like coming out of the rock. It's sort of like forming out of this like proto mass or something like that. And you can see I'm selecting them here where they're kind of coming out of the rock, and it creates this kind of contact point so it doesn't look so unnatural. And I guess the one thing I would say about this project, though, apart from the fact that I'm using a Tyflow implementation from another person on the Tyflow forums that I had corresponded with to help create a snow buildup simulation. I didn't end up using it for snow because my computer didn't have. Well, for one, I didn't realize that I wasn't instancing the rendering, and so it wasn't working right. But the other thing was that I was just generating so many millions of particles. But I did end up using it here, and it's a really great implementation, and you can find it on the Tyflow forums. If you want to know his actual name, just ask me, and I'll look it up for you. But I'm using a kind of version of that. I've modified it like considerably to fit my needs for this. But he has a kind of scale by texture function built into the simulation that I think is really useful, and it also follows like a kind of natural growth pattern and build-up that I think is interesting. So it's kind of like a hacked version of his implementation. The other thing I would just say is that there's a lot of really crazy shaders in here. In fact, I'm reluctant to even pull up my. I'll do it anyway, but I'm reluctant to pull up the Slate Material Editor because it's just literally everything here is some sort of like bizarre crystal, like subsurface scattering volumetric shader. Like I think the crystals are actually using like a blended translucent material that's being driven with some bitmap, and then like you can see here, like controlling the translucency color and the translucency scattering color, we're getting these two different shades, this kind of yellow and this pink or like fuchsia, that creates this kind of interesting kind of orange carrot color. It's like translucent carrot color. And I'm kind of creating this fake depth scattering on top of that by having it blend two sources, this one and this one, where this one is more opaque and this one's more translucent. And so I can kind of drive the translucency of the edges of the crystal shape, which gives it kind of an interesting effect. And then like let's see. The other thing I guess is like these little rocks are the main rock, which is basically just a Quixel asset that has some more bells and whistles on like the color. And I think I passed something into the sheen parameter to give it a little bit of extra realism. And then I have this kind of orange material, because when you look at the reference material for this, you can see in a lot of examples it's like a black sort of base rock with like orange sort of growing all over it. I don't mean the crystals, but this sort of like texture here, or like this one you can see black with this sort of orange growing. So I wanted to recreate that, and so I just used some vertex paint and then masked it, like multiplied it with some with like a dirt mask, and it creates this sort of here, let me pull up the image again. It creates this kind of more natural looking fall off, where we have kind of orange packed in around where all the crystals are, and then it falls off. And of course there's some orange light being cast on that, so ignore that. But if you look here, you can see the same thing of these little bits of orange and that kind of thing. So anyway, if you have more detailed questions about the shaders or whatever, feel free to ask me, and I'll try to be as much help as I can. Thanks.